This video will cover pages 2 of the 2.1, 2.3 review. And in particular, what this unit is talking about is absolute value. Now, you may have seen absolute value before, and it deals with those straight bars. And what it means is actually distance from zero. Now, as you can see, I gave a couple of just numerical examples. The first one was the absolute value of -3, which equals +3, and the absolute value of +3, which also equals +3. Now, the reason why both of these answers are positive is because their distance from 0 is 3 units, and distance is always positive. Now, in Algebra 1, we don't just deal typically with numerical answers. We deal with the variable in particular. So now, if I give you an example like the absolute value of x is equal to 3. Now, there's two possible answers that we could plug in for x, and you can see that above. We could plug in a +3 inside the absolute values and still get +3, and we could also plug in -3. So one thing we got to think about with absolute value is that there are two answers. Now, sometimes we want to add a little bit to this, and we get an example like x, the absolute value of x plus 1, which equals 5. Now, we're trying to figure out numbers that can go into x to make +5 and -5, because what you got to think about here is if I plugged in 4, for example, 4 plus 1 is 5, and the absolute value of +5 is +5. And if I plugged in, say, -6, -6 plus 1 equals -5, and the absolute value of -5 is 5. Now, we don't want to guess and check. We want a more concrete, or just an easier way so that we could get this done every single time. So what we can do is say I have an equation like x plus 3, the absolute value of x plus 3 equals 7. We can set this up into two equations. First of all, the absolute or x plus 3 equaling 7 and also equaling -7. Now, I'm going to save some time by just putting an equal sign on each side of the x plus 3. So we're actually solving two equations at one time. First of all, if I subtract 3, I got to do it to the other side. And now you got to think about, hey, you have another equation to solve, so I do it to the other side also. The +3 and the -3 cancel. 7 minus 3 is 4, equals, you're left with x. And -7 minus 3 is -10. Now there are two answers that x equals, and if you plugged them in, you'd see that 4 plus 3 is 7, and the absolute value of +7 is 7. If you plugged in a -10, -10 plus 3 is -7, and the absolute value of -7 is also +7. Now, we get a little more advanced. If you want to look over this again, you can. You can click back to the start of the video. Otherwise, I'm going to show you a couple of examples that are a little more involved. For starters, say it's something like 2x plus 3 equals 5. Now, I can set this up equal to +5 and -5, because there are two answers. I can have -5 inside of here and +5. So I'm going to fill in the middle, 2x plus 3, subtract 3, and don't forget that you have even another side of the equation. Now, 5 minus 3 is 2. Those cancel. -5 minus 3 is -8, equals 2x. Got to divide each side by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2. You have -4 equals x equals 2 divided by 2 is 1. Now, if you wanted to, you could plug these numbers back into x to test it out. So 2 times 1 which is 2, plus 3 is 5. Absolute value of 5 is 5. And 2 times negative 4 is negative 8, plus 3 is negative 5. And the absolute value of negative 5 is also 5. Now, we're going to get these a little more involved. This time, I am going to add an inequality into the mix. Now, an inequality is when we have to graph some of those problems on a number line. So I'm going to erase my dots up here so you can follow along. Say I have a problem like this. The absolute value of 2x plus 4 is greater than or equal to, let's say, 8. Well, now instead of setting up two equal signs, I'm going to set up two greater than or equal to signs. I have 8 on this side, negative 8 on the other side, and fill in the middle with my 2x plus 4. I'm going to subtract 4, but now don't forget that you have another side to this equation. Now, obviously my 4's in the middle cancel, 8 minus 4 is 4, get negative 12 on this side, and brought down my 2x here, and finally I have to divide by 2. My final answers are negative 6 greater than or equal to x greater than or equal to 2. Now, my answers are obviously up here at 2 and negative 6. Now they're filled in circles because they're equal to these values also. Now I'm going to read this side of it. X is greater than 2. Well, greater than 2 obviously goes to the right. Now on the other way, if I read this negative 6 greater than x, well, that doesn't quite make sense. I got to read it backwards. X is less than negative 6. Well, less than negative 6 goes out. Now we have a little trick. We just remind ourselves for greater than with absolute values, our graphs go apart. Now let's do one with less than to take a look at what it does. Oops. Finally, say I had a problem like this. 3x plus 6. We're going to add a little plus 2 on the outside is less than, let's say, 11. Now, see this little plus 2 hanging out here? Anytime there's a number hanging on the outside of the absolute values, you got to get rid of it right away. So for example, I'm going to subtract 2 and rewrite the whole problem. Now that I got rid of that, now I have a problem just like I did before. Anytime there's something hanging on the outside, you've got to get rid of it first. Now, I have my 3x plus 6 in the middle, bring down the less than symbol, 9, and on the other side, you guessed it, negative 9. Subtract 6 on every side, gets those to go away, left with 3x in the middle, 3 right there, and negative 15. Divide by 3, and negative 5 less than x less than 1. Now, notice I don't have an equals to signs underneath those, so that means I have an answer at 1 and an answer at negative 5. Now, I'm going to read this half of it. X is less than 1. Well, you know less than goes to the left. And you got to stop once it hits the other one, because when I have negative 5 less than x, I can read that backwards as x greater than negative 5. Now, x greater than negative 5 goes to the right. And so the only region that I want to shade even is the middle section. Now, just like greater than went apart, less than does the opposite. less than comes together. Now remember, absolute value means the distance from 0, which only have positive answers. This number out here has to be positive. So there's one answer, there's one problem on this worksheet right here that has no solution. So I'll let you guess which one that is.